Today, we begin with some sad news. On the 27th of July, the Japanese publisher Kodansha officially confirmed that the renowned author Keigo Higashino passed away in Tokyo in the early hours of the 23rd of July from colon cancer. He was 68. 68 is, by a writer's standards, still one's prime. Many mystery writers have kept their golden creative years going well into their 70s, and plenty were still publishing new books in their 80s. Agatha Christie lived to 85 and never stopped writing in her later years. Seicho Matsumoto died at 82 with new work still coming out at the very end. And Kyotaro Nishimura, one of Japan's mystery greats, wrote until the age of 90, publishing around 10 books a year, roughly one a month, earning him the nickname the perpetual motion machine of mystery fiction. Higashino himself was no different. At the time of his death, he still had a new book awaiting release. In his novel, Naoko, he once wrote a passage to this effect: "Being alive is not merely breathing, a beating heart, or brainwaves. It is leaving traces in this world. To be able to see the footprints you've left along the way, and to know with certainty that they are your own. That is what it means to be alive." Today, let's look at the traces Keigo Higashino left behind. Following them may also help answer a bigger question: why do people write? Start with a set of numbers. In April 2023, Japan's Kyodo News reported that Higashino's cumulative sales in Japan alone had surpassed 100 million copies. What does that mean? He published fewer than 110 novels in his lifetime, which averages out to over 1 million copies sold in Japan for every single one. In any publishing market in the world, that puts you squarely in mega bestseller territory. As Kyodo's report put it, a writer like this is the kind Japanese literary history could only dream of. Now look at China. According to Chinese media reports from 2018, Higashino's cumulative sales in China had reached 8 million copies by then, with royalty income of 42 million yuan, putting him at the top of that year's foreign authors rich list, ahead of Haruki Murakami, and even ahead of J.K. Rowling. When Phoenix Media later profiled him, their verdict was that he was the one who made mystery fiction the mainstream of Japanese popular literature. But here's what many people don't know. Higashino's original profession had nothing whatsoever to do with writing. He was born in Osaka in 1958. His father was an ordinary factory worker. The family had no literary background to speak of, and barely any books in the house. He studied electrical engineering in university, graduated in 1981, and joined Denso, an auto parts manufacturer, in the Toyota Group as an engineer. For those years, he wrestled with machines on the production line by day and hunched over his novels at night, submitting them to competitions. For 3 consecutive years, he entered the Edogawa Rampo Prize. Named after the Grand Master of Japanese mystery fiction, it is the most prestigious newcomer award in the genre. Winning it means being formally accepted into Japan's mystery establishment. Higashino tried 3 years running and lost every time. The turning point came in 1985. His novel After School won the 31st Edogawa Rampo Prize. He was 27. After collecting the award, he quit his engineering job and became a full-time writer. But once he turned professional, Higashino wrote for a full 14 years without ever breaking through. Why? By his own recollection, the prevailing wind in Japanese mystery circles at the time was the shinhankaku, school, intricate tricks, sealed locked rooms, airtight chains of deduction. What readers wanted was the intellectual thrill of solving a puzzle. Higashino, however, leaned toward the social school. What he cared about was a character's motive, what a person had actually lived through behind a crime. His own description of those years was that he didn't fit in. Sales stayed flat, so his income stayed flat, and the critics largely ignored him. That went on until 1999, the year he wrote the celebrated Journey Under the Midnight Sun. The book sold 2.5 million copies in Japan and 5 million in China, outselling its home market. China, Japan, and South Korea each adapted it for the screen, and its Dubin rating stands at 9 to this day. Then in 2005 came another of his signature works, The Devotion of Suspectex. It won the 134th Naoki Prize, one of the highest honors in Japanese popular literature. So here's the question: why did Higashino's later works sell so spectacularly? Drawing on the assessments of Japan's literary world, there are a few main reasons. First, as his craft matured, Higashino perfected the art of restraint, of leaving things unsaid. Through precisely calibrated omission, a story's after effect lingers long after you finish reading. Put bluntly, you close the book, and you can't stop turning it over in your mind. Journey Under the Midnight Sunday is the example that pushes this to its extreme. The book has 2 protagonists and spans nearly 20 years, the fates of 2 entire lives. But open it, and you'll notice something strange. Across the whole novel, these two characters almost never share a single face-to-face conversation. The author also barely touches their inner lives, never telling you what they're thinking, never describing what they feel. Every crucial emotion is lodged in someone else's point of view, tucked into the fine details of a gesture. That restraint opens up enormous room for the reader's imagination. What are these two actually thinking? What do they truly feel for each other? Why did they have to do what they did? Note that this is entirely different from digging holes and never filling them. Higashino's genius lies in this. Whichever interpretation you pursue, you can find solid support for it within the story. It's the old saying, 1,000 readers, 1,000 Hamlets. This is also why the book came to be regarded as one of his defining works. It established the method behind all his major novels to come. Never say everything. Place the heaviest weight outside the words on the page. Beyond Restraint, Higashino also achieved a crucial fusion of style. The verdict of Japan's publishing world is that he bridged the Honkaku school and the social school. The two camps had long been separate territories in Japanese mystery fiction. The Honkaku school dealt in tricks, logic, and locked rooms, chasing the thrill of the intellectual game. The social school dealt in character, motive, and the backdrop of the times, chasing insight into society's problems. Each side kept to itself, well water not intruding on river water, as the saying goes, and they often looked down on each other. What Higashino did, in the words of Japanese media, was weld the ingenuity of the trick to the complexity of the human heart. The devotion of Suspect X is the textbook case. On the level of the trick, it's a classic Honkaku construction built around a near-perfect alibi. On the emotional level, it carries a deep social school undercurrent. The story isn't just about how the crime was pulled off, but about why this person went that far. Now, if the skills above depend on professional accumulation and rare talent, things ordinary people can't simply copy, the next point is something anyone can emulate. And it's one of the keys to Higashino's decades of enduring sales. Second, Higashino allowed himself virtually no comfort zone. Every one of his major works was bound to an entirely new field of knowledge, which he himself would learn from scratch. Take the devotion of Suspect X, whose protagonist is a high school math teacher. To write him, Higashino went and studied mathematics, topology, the four-color problem, number theory, turning over and over how such a person's mind works. In his view, mathematicians see the world differently from the rest of us, with an obsession with logic far beyond the ordinary. The effect he was after, making readers believe, in their bones, that only this kind of person could have done this kind of thing. Or take Laplace's Witch, which involves meteorology. He went and read meteorology textbooks, air masses, atmospheric pressure, weather fronts, the troposphere. Or the miracles of the Namiya General Store era work, A Sleeping Mermaid's House, whose subject is brain death determination, and the ethics of organ transplantation. He dug into neuroscience papers, learned exactly how much activity remains in the body of a brain-dead person, and mapped out the core disputes in transplant ethics. Bear in mind that Japan's medical ethics debates of that era were tangled enough on their own, meaning he had to master not just the medical facts, but the real social tensions wrapped around them. And then there's The Sleeping Forest. To write it, he immersed himself in ballet, the movements, the terminology, the training systems, the ecosystem of a dance company, attending rehearsals and performances alike. His reasoning, the ballet world has its own language and its own psychological logic. And to write a story set there, he first had to understand them. In this respect, Higashino was a different breed from writers who run purely on imagination. He was closer to a journalist, or you might say a writer who takes up a new side job every few years. And there's one more striking detail in his creative process. According to media reports, he made a point of collecting his readers' negative reviews and keeping them somewhere he'd see them every day. Most writers would block out the bad reviews and tell themselves not to take them to heart. Those words wound, after all. Higashino did the opposite. He let those voices confront him daily, making them part of the writing itself. Looking back now, these two habits, walking into unfamiliar fields, staring at bad reviews, point to the same underlying principle. Neither depends on a state of mind. Both depend on an action. There is nothing romantic about this method. No flash of inspiration, no feverish all-nighters, no writing it all in one sitting. Just a punctual action initiated at every stage. Higashino later summed up his writing habit this way: sit down at the desk on time every day, write for 4 hours, then get up and live an ordinary person's life. Seeing from this angle, why do people write on one hand to leave traces? On the other, perhaps to let those traces carve you in return, stepping into new territory again and again through your writing and turning that exploration into rigid, non-negotiable action. It's said that in his later years, Higashino was asked on many occasions, "How do I become a writer? How do I write a bestseller? How do I find inspiration?" Every time, his answer was the same sentence: inspiration doesn't matter, doing it does.